Good afternoon. My name is Daryl Wildberg. I am a practicing Jehovah's Witness in good standing. This video is not approved by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, Pennsylvania. It's not approved by the governing body, Jehovah's Witnesses. Those 8 faithful men, also called the faithful and discreet slave, Matthew 24:45. Located in Warwick, New York. And it's not approved by any local body of elders. Jehovah God, Jesus Christ approved this video. If anybody can prove different, bring it on. I work for them. It's interesting. We're going to answer 3 questions. First of all, angels are spirits without material bodies. So why do the publications from Jehovah's Witnesses, illustrations, show them as having wings? Is this a religious tradition? Question number 2. Did the young Jewish woman Esther have immoral sex with the Persian king Ahasuerus to win his favor and thus gain advantages? Question 3. Some of Jehovah's Witnesses have been offered employment involving religious buildings or property. What is the scriptural view of such work? First question answered. Angels are spirits without material bodies, so why do we show them in illustrations as having wings? We usually depict angels with wings because of the symbolic descriptions found in the Bible. You are correct in saying that spirit creatures, we are all correct, do not have material bodies with literal wings, no faces, no hands, no feet, no other body parts. Yet, on occasions, when angels appeared to God's servants, they must have looked like normal men, for they were mistaken for such. Genesis 18:2 and 22, Genesis 19:1, and Judges 6:11 through 22. Sometimes, however, humans received visions of angels and described them. The prophet Ezekiel saw 4 living creatures, and in a later vision, he identified these as angels of the rank known as cherubs. Ezekiel 1:5, 9:3, and 10:3. Each of these angels had 4 wings, which showed their ability to respond swiftly in any direction to God's commands. They could go anywhere. They would not turn when they went. They would go each one straight forward to wherever the Spirit would incline to go. They would go. They would not turn as they went. Ezekiel 1:6, 1:9, and 1:12. But angels seen in vision did not always look the same. The angelic creatures called seraphs that Isaiah saw had 6 wings. Isaiah 6:1 and 2. There were even differences between Ezekiel's visions. In the first, the angels had feet, hands under each of the 4 wings, and 4 faces, like the face of a man, a lion, a bull, and an eagle. In his next vision, one of the faces was like that of a cherub rather than a bull, perhaps to indicate the greater power of cherubs. Cherubs are higher than seraphs. In a yet later vision of the decorations of a symbolic temple, Ezekiel saw cherubs that had but 2 faces, one of a man and the other of a lion. Ezekiel 1:5 through 11, Ezekiel 10:7 through 17, Ezekiel 41:18 and 19. In the most holy of the tabernacles, not plural, as well as the temple built by Solomon in Jerusalem, there were cherubs having 2 wings. These were on the gold lid of the chest called the Ark of the Covenant. The 2 gold cherubs faced each other, and both had 2 wings extending over the ark. Exodus 25:10 through 22, Exodus 37:6 through 9. Above the ark and its lid in Solomon's temple stood 2 larger gold-covered cherubs, each having 2 outstretched wings. 1 Kings 8:6-8, 1 Chronicles 28:18, 2 Chronicles 5:7 and 8. Josephus, the historian, wrote, "As for those cherubim themselves, no one can say or imagine what they look like. Thus, some scholars and artists based their depiction of angels, particularly cherubs, on so-called ancient Near Eastern phototypes of gods in the form of winged animals. But a more reliable guide is Ezekiel's comment that those he saw had the likeness of earthling man, Ezekiel 1:5. So when heavenly angels are illustrated in our publications, we generally depict them as essentially human in form. We show them with wings because of the numerous biblical descriptions of various angels having wings, and because of comments about angels flying. Revelation 14:6, Psalm 18:10. Finally, page 288 of the Revelation, its grand climax book at hand, portrays a winged heavenly creature having a crown on his head and a key in his hand. This is a graphic representation of the Revelation 21. I saw an angel coming down out of heaven with the key of the abyss and a great chain in his hand. This proves that Jesus is an angel, because he's the one with the key to the abyss. Apollyon and Abaddon. We understand this angel with the key to be the glorified Jesus Christ. The illustration shows him with wings to accord with the fact that angels seen in visions usually had wings. Very simple. It's not rocket science. Next question, number 2. Did the young Jewish woman Esther have immoral sex with the Persian king to win his favor and thus gain advantages? Now, some may have concluded this from secular reporting, but the reliable record in the Bible contradicts this presumption. The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus provides a secular report that Persian queen Vashti refused to appear before her husband Ahasuerus, and thereupon the king, evidently Xerxes I of the 5th century BCE, angrily rejected Vashti and agreed to an empire-wide search to find a new queen. Beautiful young virgins were assembled and given a lengthy beauty treatment. Then, when the king's eunuch thought that the virgins had had sufficient care and were now fit to come into the king's bed, he sent one every day to lie with the king, who, after having intercourse with her, at once sent her back to the eunuch. But when Esther came to him, he was pleased with her, and then, having fallen in love with her, made her his lawful wife and held their wedding. In Jewish Antiquities, Book 9, page 184 to 202, translated by Ralph Marcus, and Book 11, Chapter 6, paragraphs 1 and 2, as translated by William Whiston. The secular account could lead one to think that virgins shared in immoral sex with the king, and that the only difference in the case of Esther was that her immorality led to marriage and her becoming a queen. The Bible, however, provides us with more accurate and satisfying information than some idiot speculating in secular history. After describing the beauty treatments, the Bible says, "Then on these conditions each young woman herself came in to the king. In the evening she herself came in, and in the morning she herself returned to the second house of the women in charge of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch, the guardian of the concubines. She would not come in any more to the king unless the king had taken delight in her and she had been called by name." Esther 2:13 and 14. The scriptures clearly say that Esther was taken to the house of the women for the lengthy prescribed beauty regimen. Then Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus, and the king came to love Esther more than all the other women, so that she gained more favor and loving kindness before him than all the other virgins. and he proceeded to put the royal headdress upon her head and make her queen instead of Vashti. Esther 2, 8, 9, 16, and 17. Did you note from the Bible account where the women were taken after they had spent the night with the king to the second house of the women under the guardian of the concubines? So they had become concubines? Mordecai, the writer of the Bible book of Esther, was a Hebrew, and among his people back then, a concubine had a social status of a secondary wife. The divine law provided that an Israelite man could take a foreign girl who was captured during war, and she would become his concubine or secondary wife, with rights and legal protection. Deuteronomy 21:10 through 17, Exodus 21:7 through 11. But she could not be married. The children born to such a legal concubine were legitimate and could gain inheritance. Jacob's 12 sons, forefathers of the 12 tribes of Israel, were the offspring of his wives and legal concubines. Genesis 33 through 13. The procedure was that after the virgins were with the Persian king, they went to the house of the concubines. This indicates that they became his. What about Esther? The Bible does not say she slept with the king and thus gained his favor. It does not tell of her being taken to the house of concubines, but simply says, then Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus at his royal house, and the king came to love Esther more than all the other women. Recall that earlier, without any sexual compromise of her virtuous and virgin state, she won the loving kindness of Hegai, the guardian of the women. Further, all the while, Esther was continually gaining favor in the eyes of everyone seeing her. Esther 2, 8, 9, 15 through 17. So Esther clearly impressed the king and won his respect, even as she had won the respect of others. She was no whore. She was a virgin. How thankful we can be to have the facts and insight that the Bible provides for us. Though we are thousands of years removed from the events, we thus have reason for confidence that Esther acted with true virtue and in accord with godly principles. Esther was a Jehovah's Witness. Now, she wasn't titled a Jehovah's Witness as a Jehovah's Witness because we weren't given that name until 1931. But nonetheless, she was a witness of Jehovah God, as were all since Abel. Abel was a witness. Seth was a witness to Jehovah God. All the prophets, everybody, were actually, technically, Jehovah's Witnesses. Some of Jehovah's Witnesses have been offered employment involving religious buildings or properties. What is the scriptural view of such work? The issue may face Christians who sincerely want to apply 1 Timothy 5:8, which emphasizes the importance of providing materially for one's household. While Christians certainly should apply that counsel, it does not justify their accepting any and all kinds of secular work, no matter what its nature. I have a personal experience I wish to share with you. I got called once when I was a handyman in Arizona to install lighting in a Buddhist temple. At first I didn't find out until I went by it. I drove by it, I went back home, I wouldn't even go inside, and I called the guy and I says, I can't do the work. I'm a Jehovah's Witness and I can't enter your Buddhist temple. Now, Christians appreciate the need to be sensitive to other indications of God's will. For example, a man's desire to support his family would not justify his violating what the Bible says about immorality or murder. Compare Genesis 39, 4 through 9, Isaiah 22, 4, John 17, 14, and 16. It is also vital that Christians act in harmony with the command to get out of Babylon the Great, the world empire of false religion. Revelation 18, 4 through 5. I think I covered that in a video about weddings and funerals in Babylon the Great. Around the globe, God's servants face many employment situations. It would be pointless and beyond our authority to attempt to list all the possibilities and to make categorical rules. 2 Corinthians 1:24. Let us, though, mention some factors that Christians should consider in making personal employment decisions. These factors were set out briefly in a previous Watchtower of July 15, 1982, in an article about benefiting from our God-given conscience. A box raised two key questions and then listed other helpful factors. The first key question is this: is the secular work itself condemned in the Bible? Commenting on this, the Watchtower noted that the Bible condemns stealing, misuse of blood, and idolatry. A Christian should avoid secular work that directly promotes activities that God disapproves of, such as those mentioned. The second question is this: would doing this work make one an accomplished and a condemned practice? Clearly, a person employed in a gambling den, an abortion clinic, or a house of prostitution would be an accomplished and an unscriptural practice. Even if his daily work there was merely sweeping floors or answering the telephone, he would be contributing to a practice that God's Word condemns. Many Christians faced with employment decisions have found that analyzing just those questions helps them reach a personal decision. For instance, from those two questions, one can see why a true worshiper would not be a direct employee of any false religious organization, working for and in a church. Revelation 18:4 sets out the command: get out of her, my people, if you do not want to share with her in her sins. That's a quote from Jehovah God. Revelation 18:4. A person would be sharing in the works and sins of Babylon the Great if he was a regular employee of a religion that was teaching false worship. Whether the employee was a gardener, a janitor, a repairman, or an accountant, his work would serve to promote worship that conflicts with true religion. Moreover, people who would see this employee working to beautify the church, keep it in repair, or carry out its religious pursuits would reasonably link him with that religion. Wouldn't you? If you saw one of your brothers working in a Buddhist temple, he's a Buddhist. He's a Buddhist. Of course you would. What though about someone who is not a regular employee of a church or religious organization? Perhaps he's called upon just to do an emergency repair work on a broken water pipe in the church basement. Would that not be different from his offering a bid on a contract, such as for shingling or insulating the church roof? Again, a vast variety of situations could be imagined, so let us review 5 additional factors that the Watchtower set out. Is the work simply a human service that of itself is not scripturally objectionable? Take the example of a postman. His delivering mail would hardly mean that he was promoting a condemned practice if one building in the area he served was a church. Provides the sunlight that shines through the windows of all buildings, including a church or such a clinic. A Christian who is a postman might conclude that he is performing a human service to all, day after day. It could be similar with a Christian who responds to an emergency, a plumber called to stop flooding in a church, or an ambulance attendant called upon to treat someone who collapsed during church services. He might consider this simply an incidental rendering of human aid. 2. To what extent does the person have authority over what is done? A Christian store owner would hardly agree to order and sell idols, spiritistic amulets, cigarettes, or sausages made from blood. As owner, he is in control. People might urge him to sell cigarettes or idols and make a profit, but he would act consistent with his scriptural beliefs. On the other hand, a Christian employee at a large food store may be assigned to run the cash register, polish floors, or do bookkeeping. He does not control what products are offered and sold. Even if a few of these are objectionable, such as cigarettes or items of religious holidays, compare Luke 7:8, 17:7, and 8. This is related to the next point. To what degree is the person involved? Let us return to the example of a store. Probably, the employee assigned to run the cash register or to fill the shelves only occasionally handles cigarettes or religious items. That is a small part of his overall work. What a contrast, though, with an employee in the same store who works at the tobacco counter, all his work day in and day out focuses on something contrary to Christian beliefs, 2 Corinthians 7:1. This illustrates why the degree of involvement or contact must be evaluated in deciding employment questions. 4. What is the source of the pay for the location, or the location where the work is done? Consider two situations. To improve its public image, an abortion clinic decides to pay a man to clean neighborhood streets. His pay comes from the abortion clinic, but he does not work there. And no one sees him in the clinic all day. Rather, they observe him doing a public work. That of itself is not a conflict with Scriptures, no matter who pays him. Now, a contrast in a nation where prostitution is legalized, the public health service pays a nurse to work at brothels, running health checks intended to reduce the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. Though she is paid by the public health service, her work is entirely at houses of prostitution, making the immorality safer, more acceptable. These examples illustrate why the source of one's pay and the location of the work are aspects to consider. Number 5. What is the effect of doing this work? Will it hurt one's own conscience or stumble others? Conscience should be considered, both our own and that of others. Even if a certain work, including its location and source of pay, seems acceptable to most Christians, an individual may sense that it would be trouble to his personal conscience. The Apostle Paul, who set a fine example, stated, "We trust we have an honest conscience as we wish to conduct ourselves honestly in all things." Hebrews 13:18. We ought to avoid doing work that would leave us disturbed. Yet, we also should not be critical of others whose consciences differ. Conversely, a Christian might see no conflict with the Bible in his doing a certain work, but he realizes that it would be very disturbing to many in the congregation and in the community. Paul reflected the right attitude in his words. In no way are we given any cause for stumbling, that our ministry might not be found fault with, but in every way we recommend ourselves as God's ministers. So we always want to keep that in mind, 2 Corinthians 6:3 and 4. Now let us go back to the main question of working on a church building, such as installing new windows, cleaning the carpets, or servicing the furniture. How might the above factors be involved? Recall the aspect of authority. Is the Christian the owner or manager who can decide whether to take on such work in a church? Would a Christian having that authority want to share with Babylon the Great by bidding on a job or contracting to help some religion? Promote false worship? Would that not be comparable to deciding to sell cigarettes or idols in one's own store? If the Christian is an employee without deciding voice over what jobs are accepted, other factors ought to be considered, such as the location and extent of the involvement. Is the employee asked simply to deliver or put in a few new chairs on occasion, or to render human service, such as a fireman's putting out a fire in a church before it spreads? Many would see this as different from an employee of a business spending long time painting the church or regularly doing gardening to make it attractive. Such regular or extended contract would increase the likelihood that many would link the Christian with a religion that he claims he does not endorse, potentially stumbling them. Matthew 13:41, 18:6-7. We have brought up a number of important considerations as to employment. These were presented in the context of a specific question involving false religion, yet they can equally be considered in connection with other types of employment, such as working for a munitions company that makes guns and bullets. In each case, a prayerful analysis should be made, taking into consideration the specific and probably unique aspects of the situation at hand. The factors presented above have also helped many sincere Christians to make conscientious decisions that reflect their desire to walk straight and upright before Jehovah. They might also want to conduct an investigation into what the elders have to say about the situation. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, Isaiah 2, 3, and Hebrews 12, 12 through 14. Prayer, consideration, stumbling others, all the factors involved. Make your decision based on all the factors. Research. Thanks for watching the videos, and I hope you all have a good day.